Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hello, and welcome to Champions of Psychology, a show with the goal of openly talking about mental health and gaming presented by Codename Entertainment. I'm one of your hosts, Treavor Bettis, and with me each week is the incredible person who is...
Mitra Jordan. Although, every time he says incredible, there's a conscientious piece of me that's like, but I'm not. I'm just a person. I'm like everyone else.
I saw you literally flinch this time.
Yeah, so I'm Mitra Jordan. I'm a registered clinical counselor working in Victoria, British Columbia. I work with families, individuals. Basically, I work with a lot of different issues, and today's comes up in conversation with clients quite often. So today, what are we talking about, Trevor?
We're talking about clutter and decluttering, something I'm living right now. Literally. This was one that you suggested over the weekend, and the funny is I didn't see it till this morning, and I laughed so hard when I saw that, and I told you it was ironic, but really it's coincidental, because I know how to use that word properly, internet. But no, my house does struggle with clutter, like we really, really do. And it's gone through different waves of it and everything like that. But after my grandfather passed away, this was his house, and we took care of him through the, I moved in here when I was in 4th grade, and so like I lived with him from there all the way on to his passing, and we were taking care of him. And after he passed, like it definitely got worse because we had all of his stuff, we had all of our stuff, and everything, and it got overwhelming to the point that we didn't know what to do. But literally right now, outside in the alleyway, there are 2 trucks that are loading up all of this stuff that is no longer of use. It is just junk, and it is being taken away. And I literally can feel like this weight coming off of me. As like in between us doing the meeting before this, I kept snagging glances out back there, and it just, oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm so happy this is happening.
So you're feeling relief.
Yes. Massive relief. Yeah.
And you're reclaiming space.
Yes.
In your house.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, like, even here, like, in the den that I work in, like, I tell people, like, this is blurred for a reason. And, I've had kind of a closed-in space, and I just had enough of it this weekend and started moving out the boxes and stuff like that, and we're going to be going through them and everything like that. And so, like, I have space, like I can roll over here. I can go all the way out of frame now.
Okay, so I want you to, if you don't mind, describe for a moment, what is it that got you to that point of, I really have to do something about this, and I'm activated now, I'm going to do it, I'm going to get moving.
Well, I mean, like, we're going to talk about the ADHD part of this after
definitely.
a bit. But, like, it definitely is a bit of that where, like, I'll have, like, I think it was that I was just so overwhelmed by everything that was going on that, like, being overwhelmed by my surroundings just made it worse. And I'm like, well, you know what? I can do something about the surroundings. And so I'm going to change that. And, it's just, it feels great to have space and to, get stuff out of here and be able to, not worry about tripping over things or anyone seeing in here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like, I still got this back here that I got to deal with. But
Hmm.
this was the weekend, not the
Excellent.
musician. But yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
thing in progress. But the stuff happening outside, like, I'm so happy and grateful for what's going on. So
That's so great.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so we talked about how it's family material as well as your own material, how there was build up through time, and how you ended up having to deal with not just your clutter, as we were saying, but other people's as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so a similar thing happened for me recently in that two of my three kids have moved into their own places at quite it was in a great way, all been planned for some time. They were waiting to find affordable places.
Mm-hmm.
They were waiting to kind of get their life started in that way. And we were happy to hold space for them in their, homes that they've lived in
Yeah.
all their lives. So this meant, though, that there was an opportunity for them to do some decluttering before they moved, and then for us to look at what was left
Mm-hmm.
and make decisions. And it's also given me the space because there's an upstairs bedroom now that's not been occupied. And I've had clothing that's been kind of all over the house in the sense that the winter things kind of went into the basement because my husband and I share quite a small closet.
Mm.
And so there just wasn't enough room to have like winter jackets and
Mm-hmm.
other more bulky items in there while also having enough room to actually look through what's there and what I've wanted to wear. So there's and also there was space there for sort of specialty items. So a lot of my current decluttering, because we did a bunch of other stuff in terms of household removal of things, and the kids took certain items that I'd set aside for them, pots, pans, things like that, but that had been stored because we didn't need them, but I knew they were going to be needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of a central issue we're going to get to in terms of determining whether something is useful and to be kept for a specific reason. Does that reason come and go? As in, are there things I set aside that they decided not to take? What do I do with that? For
Yeah.
example, we ascribe value to a lot of the things we keep. How do we determine whether that value still exists or not?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to back it up
Yep.
because we talked a little bit about, first of all, we're talking about this because it's a common struggle.
Yes.
We always start with why we're talking about this, but I think we can all relate to this issue of how do we make sense of the belongings that we have. Um, we have acquired things sometimes for specific reasons and seasons in our life. We've acquired some things because we genuinely love them. We've acquired things because we have hobbies. We acquired things because I really needed a winter coat. This one was affordable, but I never really loved it. Do I have a right to get rid of it now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, how do we determine how to manage what we've acquired and how to let go? And it turns out that sorting and categorizing are actually part of human DNA since pretty much the beginning of time. And so, can we not just sort of leap to, because there's lots of literature supporting this, that trouble with sorting and categorizing has also been part of our way of being and our struggles since the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of time. So that's that's a reason to talk about it. The other is that the question I'm certainly often asked with clients, and perhaps it'll come up for those of you listening, which is that what's the difference between clutter and hoarding?
Yeah.
And it's context dependent, and it's a question of degrees. We of course say everything here is context dependent,
Yeah.
but there are specific differences, and I think it's really important to recognize what those are, because sometimes when we're surrounded by our stuff, we're like, how bad is this?
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, there's a difference between, oh God, I need to go through this cupboard and chuck stuff, and everything here has meaning, don't touch my stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, which is about that emotional attachment and emotional distress about getting rid of things. So when we're talking about hoarding, we're talking about a mental health diagnosis. So hoarding is a disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and there are specific questions that would be asked to screen hoarding. From a therapeutic standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, there are questions that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual has come up with that psychology or psychologists have agreed are important to ask. So first of all, there is a degree to which your stuff is impairing your life.
Yep.
And impairment is a really big one when we look at any disorder. We look at it with ADHD as well. How much is your ADHD impairing your capacity to function?
Mm-hmm.
So again, how much is your stuff impairing your capacity to function? How much of your thought process is caught up in managing your stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Is another way of looking at it. How much emotional distress is caught up in managing your stuff or in dealing with your stuff or in feeling overwhelmed by your stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And are you also feeling emotionally distressed at the idea of getting rid of things?
Yeah. Well, the wild one there with the ADHD part of it. When we were starting this process and clearing off the back patio and everything like that, there was we have the laundry room out there, and it was completely full. And so this was when I was getting on my ADHD meds, and it was probably like the third day that I had taken the med that I'm still taking now, and I went out there and pulled everything out, sorted it, got it into the piles and stuff. I went, this is trash, this is keep, done, and like didn't feel the I didn't feel the overwhelmed that I had like any other time I have tried to clean or organize or anything. And it felt like I was a different person. Like I was
Yeah.
like, who is this man? And that was fantastic. That felt great, getting rid of that stuff. And not but namely because I didn't once freeze and just go, there's too much to do. I can't do this. Like it wasn't even a question. It was great.
So you didn't have much of a maybe pile.
No. There really wasn't a maybe pile. There was, this is trash, this is keep, and like I think the only one is like stuff that was like my wife's and stuff like that we decide on later and stuff because I was the only one out there. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think the most difficult aspect for people in terms of decluttering is the attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's to something that has had a purpose and was expensive to purchase, say. And expensive is determined really by what we have available to us at the time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
your expensive might not be my expensive, but it's still really valid. If I
Mm-hmm.
paid more than I felt comfortable for something and it had its use and now its use is done, how do I assess whether its use is done,
Yeah.
whether I'm going to need it again, whether I'm going to be able to replace it? So these are the sorts of questions that come up for people when they're trying to make those decisions. Um, and that's the challenge. Usually there are some things that we can go, oh yeah, I don't need to keep that. And so we're going to talk about some of the different categories that come up for people that they struggle with. Um, so I just want to finish. There was a couple of other issues around the hoarding things.
Mm-hmm.
Collecting free things, for instance, you talked about convention swag
Mm.
and stuff like that. And sometimes in the moment, it can really feel like something has value.
Yep.
And it can be a real dopamine rush to get a cool thing that's free,
Yep.
say from a creator or a booth that you love or a game company that you love. But then what are you doing with it afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's a real challenge for people who do struggle with hoarding. They can value things that other people would find really not, they can value a free pen, for instance.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
So I know, right? So difficulty discarding mundane things
Yep.
and then there's a separate issue that we're not going to get into, but I'm mentioning so that yes, we are aware, and it is a separate issue, and it's to do with animal hoarding. And we're just not going there.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really heartbreaking.
Yep.
And it's really hard for a lot of people who are in the animal welfare space to not be judgmental of someone who's doing this. And of course, it's a very specific and profound mental health issue. So we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about some of the mental health challenges. So we've talked a little bit about hoarding is its own diagnosis and disorder. When we are dealing with clutter and the overwhelm around clutter, we're looking at ADHD, we're looking at ASD or autism, we're looking at high anxiety. High conscientiousness as a personality trait, perfectionism, those two kind of really come into some of the challenges in terms of getting rid of stuff. I'll get into why in a second. And then depression and feelings of despair can make it really easy to experience a state of overwhelm and therefore make it really easy to get into the cognitive space where you're able to focus and concentrate enough to sort and organize. It's a whole other level when you're just trying to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of cases to do with managing clutter, where it's not a hoarding, but it's a clutter issue. We've now distinguished the two. It can often be really helpful to have a friend or a supportive person. Really look for someone who's not going to be judgmental about what you're
Yeah.
choosing to keep, but to have someone to whom you can articulate why you want to keep a thing, or just to have another set of eyes on your
Mm-hmm.
decision making. Because for myself, I actually I don't have a lot of things that I'm sorry to have discarded, but there are a couple of things I would say that I go occasionally in my mind, I'm like, I should have kept that,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes when we're kind of giving things away, we can move into actually too much ruthlessness.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Like I will say that, you know, the stuff that I relate to, and this was definitely in my childhood and everything, like nowadays, like I can just get rid of stuff and be fine with it. And uh the funny thing is that I don't know if this is like the ADHD short-term memory thing or anything like that, but like I cannot think of anything that I've gotten rid of that I'm just like, wish I'd kept that.
No,
It
that's really
Yeah.
great. And for the most part, I can't. There's really just a couple of things. And they aren't about sentimental value. They were about practical value um, that are just sometimes harder to find or whatever.
Yeah.
So briefly back to the hoarding piece. And, I would hope, I would invite you all to have real compassion for people that are struggling. Um, Onset is earlier than you think.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something that really surprised you when we had this conversation.
Literal shock that
Yeah.
when we were pre-planning this. Yeah.
So onset for hoarding is usually age 15 to 19.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's true that we associate it often with elders. And really, if we're talking about elder people, we're talking potentially about mobility issue. We're talking about sentimentality for objects they may have had for a long time that kind of are part of the picture. But onset is pretty young, um, and usually has to do with a traumatic event or trauma in the parent generation. So one thing that I will see, one thing that I will certainly ask if people talk about a parent who's hoarding or their own tendencies to kind of really struggle with getting rid of things, because in the next generation down, it can often look like clutter rather than anything more, but it comes from anxiety that parents may have experienced in their own life. And often it has to do with events like genocide, migration, um, refugee, because we've had massive upheavals. We've had to let go of everything. We may have experienced famine or starvation.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this profound sense of trauma associated with a lack of safety and not enough, very literally not enough in terms of resources that can prompt a way of behaving that the next generation also then has to deal with, and may struggle with in a parent.
Mm-hmm.
May go over to their home and have to clean out their fridge and do all the things and really kind of struggle to help keep the space and the parent healthy. Because when we really move into that state, we're moving into issues of hygiene and mobility and use
Mm-hmm.
of space.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
that all out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how we can cope with our clutter.
Mm-hmm.
And there's various kinds. So there's paper clutter, where we tend to keep records, and things that, if there's been a legal case or some other thing, you may have a whole bunch of material. There can be a keeping of parents' paper clutter or uncertainty about what to do with things. There can be photographs that now no one knows who they are because it's been a few
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
But there can be a respectful attachment in the sense that, oh, but dad knew all these people. And it feels like a connection to dad to still have all
Mm,
the stuff, or grandpa, or whoever, right?
yeah.
So I think one of the challenges there is the sort of coming from a place of love and caring and feeling guilt at getting rid of somebody else's loved possessions.
Hmm.
But they don't have meaning to us, and we have a right
Yeah.
to enjoy our space, right?
Yeah. No, that I there's been a lot of stuff that like, that we found that it's like, you know, I like there was a bunch of model airplane magazines. He loved model airplanes. I'm like, I know these meant a lot to him and he liked them a lot. They have nothing to do with us or anything like that. Like we don't need them. And so we just
Yeah.
got rid of those. But like, and there's been plenty of other things that I know that he loved, but it's like I've I've kept a few things that I know meant a lot to him, but also meant a lot to me because I have memories of him showing how much they meant to him, and so like I'm gonna do something special with those, like set them up and stuff like that. But everything else does not need to be around.
Mm-hmm. There's also keeping things for good, as in your good china or
Mm.
your good, I don't know, household items, the good wine glasses. Um, we have, we don't really have, I think we have like maybe three or four of the wine glasses that were wedding gifts, that were our sort of wedding
Mm.
crystal. Because, we're coming up on, is it 27 or 28 years? I'm a terrible person. I
Oh
can't remember
no,
which.
you're not a terrible
Um,
person.
Somebody else do the math. We married in 97. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're
27.
coming. Okay, we married in 97, so this is 27. Okay, cool. Yeah. So there you go. And so it's been a long time and a lot of good use and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
memories, but also just enjoyment in the moment of those things, and for which I'm really grateful. But I had this isn't clutter exactly, but I have to tell this. So I have a very close friend who lives in Toronto. His family's Italian and they're all immigrant generation. She's the youngest and she came over as a babe. And they, uh, they of course had to start over really. And so everything's precious, right? And so the couches used to come with this plastic cover over top, a sort of
Oh,
vinyl plastic. Do you remember?
yeah.
And so they still had, several couches that were still covered with plastic. I got to tell you, it's not super comfortable to sit on, but
Nope.
you're saving things for good,
Yeah.
right? And so things get ascribed with sort of meaning and power.
Yeah.
And that's one reason we really struggle to get rid of them.
But
So,
it's funny stuff like that. Like I just don't even allow into my life now. Where I'm just like, it requires what kind of upkeep? No, I'm not going to do that. I know I'm not going to do that. I'm
right.
just not even going to have that in there.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really good question that relates, I think initially it relates to acquiring something.
Yeah.
It's making a decision, learning to make decisions about what to acquire, as well as an assessment, an ongoing assessment. And I think a good question is, has item earned its place
Mm.
in my house?
Mm.
Because we're forgetting maintenance and storage of
Mm-hmm.
said item.
Yep.
Are we past due? Is its rent worth it?
Yeah.
you know and because there's a mental load that we don't always acknowledge with certain things, and I think we see it often with furniture and clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, in your home, how easy is it to upkeep your furniture?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my couch has covers that are removable and can go in the wash,
Mm.
and I need new covers or to get rid of the couch. Eventually, we're getting there. But when you have kids or a busy family life or live somewhere where it can get dusty or easily dirty, are you getting a light covered couch? Because I really have questions for you if that's what you're doing. And are you getting a couch that has dust covers that can be removed and cleaned?
Mm-hmm.
Because I would highly recommend, if you have pets or kids, an easily wipeable couch that is leather or something like that, or an easily removable cover that you can wash is key.
Mm.
So it's going to extend the life of whatever item you have, and therefore you won't need to have this question of replacement quite as soon as you otherwise might. So partly it comes into, what am I getting, and is it useful to me?
Yeah.
And a really useful question around clothing that I learned a long time ago was, dress for your dominant season. So I live
Oh.
in Victoria, BC, which doesn't get a very hot summer.
Yeah.
Well, they're
It is.
hotter now.
Yeah, I'm like it's a little
Questions,
warmer right now.
Pacific Northwest, I don't know. But in general, we have a lot of spring and fall for a lot of the year
Mm-hmm.
in terms of climate. So we deal with rainfall, I'd say 3/4 of the year, or cooler weather where you need to layer up. And I grew up in Toronto, and before that, hotter climes. So I had a real fondness for the summer dress, for
Mm.
the nice little light sundress. You throw it on, it's nice and easy, you know? And so I would buy these things, these sundresses. And guess what? Guess who couldn't wear them much of the year? So shop your dominant
Yeah.
season is a really useful thing to keep in mind. And, don't invest in a lot of things that are going to take up space that you're not going to be able to use most of the time.
Yeah.
And this is where they talk about the 80/20 rule kind of thing on this one.
The
They
80
love the
20.
80/20
I don't
rule
know
for
the
lots
80
of things.
20.
80% of your things should be useful 80% of the time. And only
Oh.
20% of your things can be useful 20% of the time. Now, that might be an important 20%. I have a Ninja Creamy, I'll admit. I love making ice cream. I'm not one to make ice cream much when it's cold, but for the time that we're in warmer weather,
Hmm.
we use it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
it's something, go on.
well, no, I actually like that one a lot. The 80% of your things should be useful 80% of the time. Like the thing that sucks for me is that I'm in Southern California where it is regularly warm. I'm a jacket man. I love me a jacket, and there's like a month and a half where I really get to wear them.
Yeah, you could invest in a linen jacket.
Ooh, oh,
Right? So
mm.
a jacket that's a lot lighter that you can wear more of the time, cotton canvas, linen, stuff like that, could be really useful. A good wool jacket is a glorious thing, but may not be super useful for you. So it comes to, how do I make my things work for me, right? Rather than me being in service of them,
Oh,
you
Mitra, you
know?
may have given me my new thing. I've never looked at Amazon during this show, but I just
Oh,
did. Yeah, no, I kind of
geez,
like these.
get back here.
Sorry. I'm a jacket guy. Like I said, I love me a jacket. But no, I do think that's a good one because out I think even outside of like clothes and stuff like that, like I do think that there's quite a few things that useful 80% of the time is good because like surprise surprise, I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I do like me a D&D mini and stuff like that, but I play primarily online. I haven't played a
Yeah,
game in person probably since 2019.
yeah.
And I have bought a few minis since then, but the thing is though, is like I have definitely toned down the amount that I would get, because there's not a reason for it. There's if I'm not playing it 100% of the time, there's no point in having those. Like I got Tiamat sitting up there. That was a little special thing, but like um I think I've been kind of doing that 80/80 thing or 80/20, whatever it is, like just
Yeah.
of the fact of like I don't need to stockpile these because I have no idea when I'm ever going to do this again.
I think that's it. And I think this question of stockpiling occurs a lot more than we think.
Hmm.
You go to the grocery store, canned tomatoes are on sale. You make lots of spaghetti, so you buy more. You're excited. You come home and realize you have 6 scans already. Like, hello? So having a space that's organized so that you can see what you already have is important. And this is where decluttering often ends up talking about closets and stuff, clothing and things like that, simply because we can often squirrel things away.
Oh yeah.
And we do it because we might be limited on space. This episode was partly inspired by the fact that I have been decluttering some of my clothing because now that I have more room, because said adult children have flown coop, I can actually have stuff in one space and do a better job of assessing what I have, which is why Marie Kondo became so popular. Well, one
Oh
of the reasons is that
God.
she kind of has you take a category and have all of the stuff in one space
Yeah.
so that you can see it. But there is a difference here. Is it con do or con don't? Because I'm going to tell you what doesn't work for me and what doesn't work for a lot of clients of mine, which has to do with if you have all of your stuff in one space and you've dumped it onto your bed, say, I don't know about you, but that kind of visual clutter, just the sheer enormity, perhaps, depending on what item it is we're talking. Is it clothing? Is it paper? Is it, I don't know. It might be too much. It's too much for my brain to process. I want to go lie down with a cold compress.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to go play a video game. I want to sit in the other room and pretend nothing bad is happening over there. Like I shut down. So a big piece of managing and going through your material, whatever it is being able to take it bit by bit in a way that works for you.
Yeah.
So, yes, you want to be able to see everything, but is there a space where you can set that up where it's not overwhelming or where you can categorize your everything into smaller sets? So, for instance, do all your pants one day, all your outerwear the
Yeah.
next, or whatever,
Yeah.
so that you're not actually having to look at everything all at once.
I will say this real quick on the Brie Kondo thing because like I got the books, I read them, I watched a bit of her show and stuff like that. There was stuff that worked, stuff didn't. Like my wife and I once did the pile everything up, and we did that with our books. And I will say,
Mm.
seeing all of our books in the living room in piles, it was a oh boy situation. But we got rid of so many of them, and now we have a bunch of them again. Because books is definitely the problem that she and I have. We'll go. It's just like, oh, it's a Saturday, let's go to Bookstore. And but the thing that I heard with Marie Kondo that cracked me up, and this I heard this, I saw it in an article. I don't know the validity of it, but apparently after Marie Kondo had kids and she was still trying to keep up her method, she was like, no, I get it now. No, I understand. Yeah, no, a lot of the stuff I was saying you weren't able to keep up on.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Yeah.
really funny. Because yeah, there's good ideas in there. Like one of them that I put on here for the decluttering thing, and I think this was from Marie Kondo, but the one that I've held on to with it is do you want to take this into the next 10 years? And that one has really, really helped me on a few things because,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, I don't
Mm-hmm.
pop figures are a thing that like I don't have too many of them here and there. And, I have them that kind of just do that, like, oh, there's a little dopamine hit on my desk. There's a little owlbear. That's cute. But like, if it's coming down to like, okay, well, it's time to, donate some things down the road. It's like, okay, well, is that pop figure what I want to have on my desk in 10 years? Nah, I'm not really into that show anymore. Gone.
Yeah, we have to recognize that we evolve
Yeah.
and that that's a good thing, and that that which we were excited about or interested in may have faded, it may, and I think that part of the problem with that, particularly when it relates to hobbies, is the idea that when I have more time, I will want to do this again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, will you? Like maybe you will.
Yeah.
There could be some truth to that. And if you've acquired things that are expensive and you have the space to store them and you're okay with the rent, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not causing a mental load, okay.
Yeah.
But if you have had to rent kind of storage space for your stuff and it's costing you over 100 a month to keep this thing, that's 1,200 a year. And could you replace the stuff for 1,200?
Oh,
right?
oh, wow. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Right? And
Yeah.
are we keeping it for more than a year? Right?
The
Because now, you know,
yeah. Well,
it's money.
this kind of comes into like the hobby episode that we did, talking about like, if you're getting into something, not buying the like the high end expensive stuff of it, because if it does come down to like the stuff where it's like, oh well, I haven't painted in years and stuff, I can get rid of the stuff now because I can if I want to do it again, I can rebuy that stuff down the road if I want to do that, but it's not taking up space in my house right now, and it's not taking up a mental load. So I would much rather buy it again down the road than do that. But if you have like a very high end thing that you were doing for a hobby and you haven't done that in a long time, I do kind of understand the like, oh well, I want to hold on to that. We have sunk cost fallacy in here on things, and I do think that one is a little bit harder to get around when it's something that you did spend a lot of money on, but it's not something
Yeah.
that you've done in a long time.
Yeah, and it's true that we evolve and might get back to certain hobbies. So for instance, I have a Rubbermaid container, not an entirely small one, but one that has some really beautiful yarn in it.
Mm.
Um, and I have room to store it, and I have cedar chips in there, and the yarn is carefully organized, so I'm good with keeping it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are several questions in there. Do you have room to store the thing correctly? So
Mm.
that is it
Mm.
something that's going to expire? Because if you had an acrylic painting hobby, acrylic paints dry out over time.
Yeah.
So your sunk cost is going away anyway.
Yep.
And maybe it would be a good idea to donate that stuff to there's a store in town. I don't know if any of you have this, but I would look around. I would either give it away free on like Facebook Marketplace or whatever, but we've got a store that's kind of, it's not an art assignment consignment. I think you donate stuff, but it can be, then they'll sell, used art
Mm-hmm.
supplies that are still good to other people for a discount. So someone else, some other deserving person,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to look for that deserving person, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying here,
Yeah.
right? Because one of the difficulties with getting rid of stuff that we valued
Who
is
want to
we
go
do
to a good
want it to
home?
go to exactly. And that can be a real challenge, and I don't want to have to look for the good home. So, maybe there's some places to donate, but maybe there's an organization that can take care of that for you.
So here's one. We had my grandfather's car for after he passed away and everything, and we used it and everything like that, but it was not it hasn't been running for like the last year. And so we were like figuring out how to get rid of it, and again, like because it's my grandfather's car and he took me to high school and that and everything like that, there was that whole like, I don't want it to just go to like a junkyard or something like that. And I remembered that the car he had before it, this old Toyota truck that he loved, he donated it to the auto museum that's in the area. And so I
Hmm.
went, I mean, maybe they'll take a PT Cruiser. Uh and so I called him up, and I told him like, hey, I've got this, Chrysler PT Cruiser that I'd like to see if I can donate to you all. And they sounded kind of like, I don't know about that. And they're like, why do you want to do it? And I told them, I'm like, this was my grandfather's car, and he donated his last one to you all, and I thought that'd be a great way to do it. And they immediately swapped, and they were just like, yes, absolutely, we will take that. And so that I did get to feel good about that one, of like, it's no longer taking up space in front of the house, and I feel like that's what he would have wanted, so it really hit all those places for it. But that is one thing. When it comes to like other stuff that he has, I don't need to worry about the like, is this going to a good home? Because it's like, well, it's probably like 50 years old. If it's something that probably has value to someone, yeah, we're probably gonna like donate it or something like that to something that somewhere where it's gonna end up finding a good home. I don't necessarily have to worry about me finding the right home for it,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
I think that's exactly it. And actually, this one hits rather close to home because I have the van that we drove the kids around, and we're not
Yeah.
using it. We're not
Mm-hmm.
using it. I have to get rid of it. And I found it really difficult. I've been very attached to this one object here. Um, and I know that some of those listening and one of the moderators who knows me really well, in fact, will be like, "Oh God, yes, you really need to do that." Um, yeah, and I realized, yeah, I named this van. It was the mothership. It took the kids everywhere. It was a
Yeah.
real stage of our lives during which, and I think this is why objects can be so difficult to get rid
Oh
of,
yeah.
because they are so representative of perhaps an intense or emotional or profound or meaningful period. And certainly this van relates to my parenting.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Oh
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
tear up.
no, no, Mitra. Like I'll be fully honest right now. The guy, the tow truck came and like they had the flatbed and everything,
Mm.
and they started loading up, and I just started crying. Like I was bawling, and I'm sure that tow truck dude just thought that was the weirdest thing, but he's just standing there solemn, just crying. But
Oh,
uh,
I
but
don't
but
know. I don't know. I bet you they see it more than
it
you
could
would think.
could be, yeah, but
Yeah.
like the while I was sad because like that was my grandfather's car and all of that stuff, that didn't change that I didn't still have the memories of that and everything.
Yeah,
Like I still
exactly.
I still
Exactly.
like I can remember the time that I opened the door after a day of high school and Grandpa was still listening to my Halo 2 soundtrack and he's like, "This is pretty good music." I'm like, "This is Incubus. What are you talking? You like Incubus?" You're like, I'm still gonna always have that memory, and and how the car looked and everything like that. It didn't mean that it needed to be out there or that we needed to keep using it. That's still always gonna be around.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing that we do need to separate. We
Yeah.
need to separate the artifact
Mm-hmm.
from the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is actually the toughest category for people to cope with is the objects that we have that are imbued with personal significance to our identity,
Mm-hmm.
either our current one or to a previous identity that we really valued. It can be really difficult to get rid of those things,
Yeah.
especially if in your history somewhere things were gotten rid of out from under you,
Oh yeah.
which is definitely my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Having migrated countries, gone back for a visit, expected to be able to take certain things with me, and to find that they were just gotten rid of. One of the key ones for me was my school uniform. It is
Mm.
a tradition at the high school I went to growing up, that when you leave, everybody signs your uniform and
Oh.
you take it with you. And for some reason, because I couldn't quite believe we were leaving forever, I didn't bring my uniform. And I
Mm.
think it was a way, in fact, to keep a tie going.
Yeah.
Little did I know that it would be 16 years before I came back again.
Damn.
And of course, they'd gotten rid of it. I
Damn.
understood that, and I
Yeah.
wasn't hurt that that happened. But I think that when we talk about the things we give away, it's really important to be intentional about them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
Mm.
want an accidental giveaway if we can help it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the problem with leaving or leaving in a hurry or any of those experiences that are traumatic. We talked briefly last week about disenfranchised grief. This is another experience of disenfranchised grief that many people have, which is when our grief isn't connected to what other people are experiencing and feeling. So you get rid of things, other people might be experiencing that as a relief.
Mm-hmm.
And so your loss of the thing isn't necessarily acknowledged by those around you.
Mm. Mm.
A classic example of disenfranchised grief, just to help people really contextualize it, is say you were having an affair with someone. Horrible, I know,
Mm-hmm.
but as in horrible for all
Yeah.
in the midst of this messy. But say there was you say this was the thing that was happening, and then that person suddenly dies.
Mm.
You can't even talk about it,
Mm. Hmm.
except potentially with the therapist, unless you want to upset the apple cart and end your relationship, or if but the point is, it's something you're experiencing. people often experience it with migration
Yeah.
because there's excitement or safety or delight in the idea. Everybody's adjusting, and you really miss those dinner plates you couldn't bring.
Mm-hmm.
Those dinner plates that represented your childhood or your family experience, and you miss them because they're emblematic.
Yeah.
And so, we might feel really alone in that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a struggle in terms of your partner wants you to declutter things. They're on your case. That's how it feels sometimes
Yeah.
for people. And so you do, and then you're feeling really sad, and they're just so relieved and happy.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
how do we kind of recognize that we made the right choices there, but at the same time be able to talk about the complexity of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
and in that situation, like it is difficult because I feel like both people are valid for having those feelings, and but like at the same time, not talking about that, like that sounds like a hotbed for resentment sort of thing. And so yeah,
Yeah.
I think a dialogue there needs to happen of some form, that like it's still something that need to happen. That person is still right to have relief of it being gone, but the other person is still right to have the grief over losing the thing.
Yes.
And so, just I even if it's just expressing that, it's just like, I'm sad we got rid of that, or
Yeah.
and the other person saying like, I'm glad we got rid of it. I understand your grief of it. And I think that's more of, it's just like, I understand that you are having these feelings, and I understand why you are having these feelings, not a, you're weird for having that feeling. That's absolutely the last
Exactly.
thing
We
that
want
should
to
happen.
stay away from judgment
Yeah.
because it's really not helpful,
Yeah.
and just look at observation and needs and the space we have and
Yeah.
what makes sense to keep. Um, so we haven't talked about conscientiousness, but it is actually an important one because sometimes when we purchase things and we recognize we're in a climate crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we buy certain things, we know there's a good chance that they're going to end up in a landfill, that they might be ecologically a toll on the earth. So, for instance, a lot of clothing goes into landfills. A lot of clothing has some degree of plastic in it.
Mm-hmm.
This breaks down into microplastics. Affects our environment and it affects our wildlife. And fast fashion has been a huge problem.
Oh God, yeah.
Right. So, what are we acquiring? Why are we acquiring it? How are we getting rid of it? Is there a way to keep it out of the landfill? So, if you're a conscientious person who's then having to get rid of stuff, either yours or other people's in your family, say, and you're looking at it and you're going, this is polyester fleece, but it's just an ugly fleece blanket and I need to get rid of it. What do I do? Right. So, did we didn't always think it was ugly, but unfortunately now we do for whatever reason, and we don't need it.
Yeah.
Where do we donate these items? So there are organizations that help you sort your stuff. There are people who will
Hmm.
come in and help you.
Hmm.
And there are certainly organizations who will also take away your things and donate them to the right people.
Yeah.
I think I don't. I think that there are also organizations that will take fabric and clothing. I've given away scraps. I've tried to categorize the scraps a little bit. So if it's all cotton, it's in one pile, or if it's all natural fibers. But, other people are going to be way better at determining and sorting.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be an expert, and it's okay to get rid of things
Mm-hmm.
because you are going to be a more effective person in your life and in the world if you're not carrying the mental load
Yeah.
of stuff you're not using.
100%. Well, I think that is actually a good place to wrap things up because we are at our time.
Mm-hmm.
Mitra, if people want to find you on the interwebs, where can they do so?
So they can find me at Mitra Jordan on the site that rhymes with bitter. Well, used to anyway. I'm going to say also quitter.
I like,
And
yeah, I
I'm
like
going
that
to
one.
say it's the site that causes me vex. And also I want to hex. But anyway, before this turns into slam poetry, yeah, you can find me there. At Mitra Jordan is my handle. You can also find me on mitrajordan.com, which is my website. And that's about it for me. I'm not very active in other socials. In fact, I'm not terribly active on the socials. But
I've
you,
been telling
Trevor,
people you can find the social media ghost of me on social media sites at the Trevor. There's an A hiding in there because I don't really use them that much anymore, and it's been really nice.
kind of decluttering from social media,
Yeah.
because you can do digital decluttering too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pictures you haven't sorted, the
I
email you didn't go through.
I literally just found out you could do folders in photos, and I'm like, well, I know a day I'm gonna have.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is making time
Yeah.
for all this, and not stressing about, doing an hour and then letting it go if that's what works for you.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode. Till next week. Take care of yourself.
Take good care. Next week is our season ender.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We
Yeah,
should say that.
yeah. We're gonna be doing something. So tune in.
Something. Yeah, tune in.
Right, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.